Compression brings that background closer to your subject to make it feel more snug, like they're right there in the center of everything. But if we zoom out, and now we're at 70 millimeters, and you can see the trees don't feel like they're gonna swallow me up anymore. Let's discuss it. Let's look at a couple images. Let's see how it works and how it affects your image. Because there's a reason higher megapixel cameras exist. There's a reason people shoot in 8K. There's a reason we still use telephoto lenses, and we're not all walking around with 16 to 35s and trying to zoom in 200x. There's a reason for that. So let's look at a couple images and talk about it. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this lens as our subject. And we're gonna see this background. I've got some tomato plants back there, and we're just gonna use compression to pull them in. So what we're gonna do is I've got the 24 to 70 right here, and I'm gonna take some images with that. And then I'm gonna throw the 70 to 200 on there. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna shoot all the way at 24, and I'm gonna put the 70 to 200, and we're gonna shoot all the way at 200. Simple, easy. And then I'm gonna crop the 24 to look like the 200 and see if we lose any data. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
So we're gonna look at 3 images really quick. This is 24 millimeters. It was shot with the ISO 400 at an f4. This is 70 millimeters and ISO 400 f4. 200 millimeters ISO 400 f4. And you can see the difference between these. And now most people aren't going to say that you can crop in from 24 to 200. Most people are saying you're going to be cropping in from 24 to maybe like a 35 millimeter, and it can achieve close to the same compression. While that's true, and if you have a higher megapixel sensor, you can do that. It's still not going to have the exact same look, because if we go right here, we're at 24 millimeters, and say we want to try to get it close to the 70. Now, if you have something that has maybe a 60 megapixel sensor, it's going to get you a lot closer and look a lot more clear. But let's just look at this really quick. We're going to try to get this as close to the 70 as possible. So if we look at that, and if we look at the 70, we can see that the 70 is just a little more clear. And we're going to zoom in even more from this. So we're going to go in and jump to like a 300%. And you can see just, you can read that. It looks clear. It still looks pretty good. But if we go in even farther on this one, this is the 24 millimeter one. And let's try to zoom in just a little farther to make it, close to what the other one is. You can barely read those words. You know what they say, obviously, but you see the issue here when you're trying to do that. If you have a lower megapixel sensor, you're not gonna be able to crop as well. Now, if we go to the 70 to 200, let's go all the way down. You see that? You see how close we are on that? We can go all the way in if we need to. We can go even farther if we need to. And you start to see some of the issues with the 70 to 200 right around here with that chromatic aberration right on these corners. But, that's not what this video is about. But we're going to go out just a little bit to the 800. And you can see we can still read what those words are. This is the 24 to 70 Sigma. And this is at 24 on the left. This is at 70 on the right. And you can see just how much better it is when you're zoomed in. You can see that compression back here, right? We can see how that tree looks a lot closer than it does here. It just looks a lot better when you do it during the shot than if you're trying to do it in post, because you can get that blurry background. You can achieve a lot of that stuff you want to while you're shooting versus having to do it in post and maybe it not working out. But you can look at those differences. And even if we drop the 200 over here, you can see that this 70 looks good. But if we zoom in even more, you see how close those are right there coming across. You see the difference between the two. Even if I were to lighten this up a little bit to try to make it match a little bit, you can just see the clarity using the 70 to 200 at 200 versus zooming in to 200. And like I said, that's very drastic of me to do, but I just wanted to kind of put the point across that yes, compression you can achieve in post, but it doesn't always look as good.
There's a few reasons to introduce compression into your image, because you want to bring that background closer to your subject. So for me right here, I want to bring these trees closer to me. I can see where they're at, but we would just want to tighten it up a little bit, right? So I've got a stick here, and I'm going to put it in the ground, so that way I'm standing at both spots when we do this video. All right, cool. We're at 35, and I'm going to walk a little closer and a little closer. And what you can see is my background staying where it is, right? It looks like a decent background, but it feels like it's kind of far off in the distance. But what we want to do is we want to bring that closer, because we want viewers to think that we're immersed in it. And while might not be the best example, this is what I can do in my backyard. So now I'm standing by the stick, and I put it in Super 35 mode. And while that's not a lot of compression, that puts us at a 52.5 millimeters. And you can feel how that gets a lot closer to us. And if I walk closer, we can see just how much that feels like it's like on top of us and we're in it. But what happens if we go even farther and throw it at like a 70 millimeter? So we're standing by the trusted stick, we're at 70 millimeters. You can see the background gets a little closer and it looks pretty good. But what happens when we throw this camera into Super 35 mode at 70 and it turns into 105? Do you want to see even more compression? And Super 35 mode, if you're not aware, it basically allows your full frame sensor to be used as a crop sensor. So you lose a little bit of data within your image, but you can get in a little more reach at a roughly 1.5 crop like you would a crop sensor camera. So while this isn't always the best way to do it, this is the way we're gonna do it for this. So now we're at 105. And before you even notice, yes, the reason it's like only chest up is because I kept my tripod the same, I kept the camera the same. I'm trying to keep everything exactly the same, so that way you can see what it looks like without things moving around. I'd rather you see what the image looks like than you see me in the image. Because I'm not worried about what you're seeing of me, I'm worried about if you're learning anything from this video. And if you did learn something, I really appreciate you hanging out with me today, looking a little bit into what compression does, how it affects your image. And if this was helpful, just give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button, because I'd love to keep trying to do educational content in the future, even if it's something super simple like this and it's only gonna take 5 minutes for you to learn something quick. That's what I think photography content should be, is short, to the point, and you go out there and practice what you learned.